welcome to Coffee with the Carter Man. Actually, full disclosure, it's Pepsi today, but I couldn't very well call the show Sugar Water with the Carter Man. So we'll stick with Coffee with the Carter Man, and we got an incredible show for you today. But before I even go into the overview that I always do up front, I want to show you a video. Our producer, Gary, is going to bring in a video that puts it all in context for us, okay? Puts it all in context as to what's happening now. So, Gary, let's roll this thing. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Look at this. UFC, 60,000 people. Look at this, on their feet, cheering. Number 45, number 47. Beautiful, beautiful. This is what we're all about. I love it. Look at this. Look at this. The whole stadium is just going crazy as Donald Trump walks in. You think they would ever done that for Kamala Harris? For God's sake, they would have fled the ballpark. Yeah. Here we go. Here we go. 45 to 47. That says it all. That says it all. There we go. All right. Over and out. All right. Why did I want to show you that? Okay. Oh, because we love Donald Trump. You know, we want to celebrate his incredible comeback, the greatest comeback in political history. But also because the reaction you saw from those people serves as a cue to all of us as to what we need to do now. Okay. Winning the election was big, but it's from the frying pan into the fire. And the message we got to get across, and I'm going to cover it today. I'm going to focus on it today. Brace yourself. Brace yourself. Look. I got my Calabrese shirt on. That's why I'm wearing this instead of a sports jacket today. My mother was Calabrese. The hardheads, very tough people. I was going to wear my Vito Genovese hat, but I thought that might be a little frightening, so I'm not going to do that. But the point is, we're going to be tough today because we got to be tough from now on. The other side is the poorest losers in the world, and it's time for us to tell them, we won, like we just saw in that video. You lost, and we're taking it to you. That's where we're going today, okay? Let me take another sip here because I'm talking so fast. That's how sweet it is. All right. The overview. First, we start with the potpourri. Everybody knows the rules. Potpourri. We're going to start off at my analysis of what's happening in the news now, what's going on, and why it's happening, all right? We'll talk about that. The interview. Today, I have not just a legend for you, but an icon, literally an icon. All right. I have been a fan of this gentleman since I was a kid. You're saying since Woodrow Wilson was president, not that long, but honest to God, over 60 years. And when you watch him, when you listen to him, when you benefit from his knowledge and wisdom, you're going to say, now I understand why you're such a fan. The man is incisive, he is intelligent, and he knows what's going on, and he shares why. Plus, we're going to talk a little bit. You know, we like our interviews to be a visit. Going to talk a little bit about some of the incredible things he's done over the past 60 years while I have been watching him. Okay. All right. And then the predictions. Okay. Going to bring in Chad, Sammy. Hopefully, our guests will stay around for it. Got some great predictions for you. We got just an incredible amount of stuff today. I got to be honest. That's why, look, I'm almost breathless. I'm talking so fast because, you know, I don't like to take up all the time with just me. The interview is more important, and I know a lot of you find the predictions more fun. Okay. But let's first do our potpourri of the news. All right. Our potpourri of the news, because there's some important stuff going on. Okay. The number one story, in my opinion, is the appointments. And I'm going to get to that in a minute, okay? I got my watch on. I'll try and keep a segment always to, 10 minutes at the most. That to me is the number one story, the appointments, which are incredible. But before I get to that, I want to hit something that just happened within the last 24 hours. And it's this right here. Okay? the fruitcake in the White House, instructing Zelensky to start sending ATACMS missiles, and you can bet when it'll be cruise missiles eventually, into the heart of Russia. Folks, it's insane. That's called insanity, all right? And this sleazy Joe Biden is the only president in history that would have done something like this. I was going to say as a lame duck. He's not a lame duck. He's a dead duck. The American people told him, we hate you and anybody you associate with. That's why we saw that video a minute ago. And he decides to broaden a war that could lead to nuclear war. It's just that simple. Let me ask you, would you, if you were Putin, let somebody launch missiles into cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg, the other 10 Russian cities that have over 1 million citizens? Well, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing with this guy here, okay? This guy here says, I don't have to listen to anything the U.S. says. Now I'm free to go ahead and attack anywhere I want, okay? Yeah, Zelensky, the grifter, you know, who Trump has already tried to talk to. Look, Trump, the grifter, look, there we go. There's the little lovebirds with the $5 million Bugatti that she bought with our tax dollars that we sent over. Biden sent over among the nearly trillion he has really sent over in order to wage war. And what's the danger in this? Trump had already talked to Zelensky and explained to him, we're bringing this thing to an end. I think the truth be known, he talked to Putin too, okay, even though they're both smart enough to deny it. So we won't get all this Russia bull crap again. But they made it clear, you know, Trump made it clear this thing is over. So what does Biden do? He ties his hands by turning it into a major confrontation now that could lead to nuclear war. Putin made that clear. We're not standing for it. I mean, what do you think we would do? What do you think we would do if Putin put missiles in Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua, and then said, start launching them at the United States? And keep in mind, it's not Zelensky, the little grifter who runs around in his tights and stiletto high heels, that's going to actually push the button. It's U.S. military. The Ukrainians do not have the technology, the satellites, or the know-how to do it. So we are essentially having our military launch a war against Russia, okay? Against Russia. So why are we doing it? Well, you know, let me read you what Donald Trump said, okay? Donald Trump Jr., because I think he kind of summed it all up, okay? The military-industrial complex seems to want to make sure that they get World War III going before my father has a chance to create peace and save lives. Got to lock in those trillions. Life be damned, imbeciles. He's right. He's right. What more is to say? Lockheed, these ATACMS, Lockheed admits to a $500 million contract. Lockheed, by the way, which brags that 1 out of every 5 of its employees is military, is in the military, has been in the military. Okay. Raytheon also makes billions and billions here. You say, Carter, why are you bringing up Raytheon? They don't make ATACMS. No, but they own the Secretary of Defense. He worked for Raytheon. Why do you think all these hundreds of billions have been funneled to the arms makers? And now Biden is his last step back. This sleazy man tries to widen the war even further. Okay. What would we do if Putin was doing this in Cuba, let's say? Well, let me read you something here. Okay. Let me read you something. Some of you are going to recognize it. Some of you aren't. Third, this is from a speech. It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States, requiring a full retaliatory response from the Soviet Union. October 22nd, 1962, that was one of JFK's last major speeches, the Cuban Missile Crisis. You don't think Putin's going to respond the same way? If the United States launches missiles in Ukraine, we will consider it an attack on our country and we will retaliate fully. And remember, we have 800 bases around the country. It's insanity. Let me finish up by saying this. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if instead of using a hammer, we were showing some heart? How about instead of sending all that money, those ATACMS, $1 billion worth of ATACMS to the Ukraine to kill people in a war that Trump was on the way to ending? How about if we use some of that money to help these people? Some of you may recognize that. That's Honduras. It's underwater. Those already beleaguered and poor people are losing everything. If this picture doesn't break your heart, you don't have one. How about if we help them instead of killing more in a war that we've already, because Biden has ordained the war, the munitions makers, the military industrial complex has already killed 600,000 young Ukrainians, probably 100,000 young Russians. Needless war, never had to happen. Trump was on the way to ending it. So Biden does that. Okay. The other part of my potpourri today is this. Okay. This. You say, who's that? Well, that's a woman named Sherilyn Ifill. She is a racist. She's a racist. Howard University. She's leading the opposition to Pete Hespeth. If I'm pronouncing his name, I apologize. I can never get names right. Because according to her, he is a white supremacist. Now, she supports defunding the police. She supports BLM, but he is the racist. Excuse me. And why is he a racist? Because on his arm, he has this tattooed, that cross. You say, well, what is that, Carter? Is that a Nazi cross? No, actually, it's not. That is called the Cross of Jerusalem. It's a Christian cross. It's a Christian cross introduced into Jerusalem in 1099 by King Godfrey of Beloy. Okay, I'm pronouncing that wrong, but some of you will know who it is. And into Jerusalem when he was one of the first kings to conquer Jerusalem. Now, was it a white supremacist symbol, as she says? Was this, when Godfrey had it created and took it in there, a white supremacy symbol? Well, let's think here. According to the leading authority on Jerusalem at the time, Alan V. Murray, who's written the book on it, Jerusalem at the time had Jews and Samaritans, some Muslims, no African Americans. Lo and behold. Well, how about this, Miss Ifill? That's the flag of the nation of Georgia. Okay, remember, this is a symbol that he has tattooed on that she says means he's a white supremacist. Well, nation of Georgia. Let's look at the record. Who lives in Georgia? Georgians, 89.9%, not a surprise there. Armenians, 4.8%. Azerbaijanis, Russians. Hold on. Let me check here. Let me look. Let me get my magnifying glass here. No African Americans. So it's not a very useful symbol of white supremacism. Folks, this nonsense has got to stop. Okay? This nonsense has got to stop. We've got to put an end to this. We have to fight back. We can't allow vile people like her and the hard left to dictate who Trump gets to put in office. Okay? If we do, we're done. We're done. Look, these are the kind of freaks Biden put in office. And the mainstream media thought they're wonderful. Freaks. We try and put a good, decent man, a military veteran, a man who's written a book on how much he loves veterans, what we need to do for them, and active service soldiers. And the left goes, has a conniption fit. Oh, he also had sex with a woman that didn't want it. Really? This is a woman who says that her job was to escort him to his room. The man was in his 30s. And She was told to escort him to his room at the end of the night. I've done a lot of speaking places, and I don't remember some woman escorting me to my room, arm in arm on the video camera, unless, come on. And now she says, I don't remember what happened after I escorted him to the room, laughing and smiling. I don't remember what happened, but I do know. And then she went and told her husband she spent the night with a friend and went to sleep on her couch. That's credible. If Trump allows the Me Too's to crucify Pete Hespeth and Gates, who they're also falsely accusing, we will never have another male appointee, conservative appointee in history. All right. So there you go. There's my open. There's my potpourri. How do I feel? How do I think we should respond to these leftists now who are telling us we need to be nice to them while they crucify us, maybe on the cross of Jerusalem? Well, let me show you how I think we should respond to them. I told you I was going to go Calabrese on you. Yes, we should forgive our enemies, but not before we hang them. I'm sorry. We got to win, folks. We won the election. Now we have to win the battle that follows it and reorganize this country, reorient this country, tear down the government that's become so vile. That's why I'm glad Trump has appointees, Tulsi Gabbard, the Hespeth guy, Gates, his new press secretary, who's one tough little woman, Brenda Carr at the FCC, who's already saying, hey, you dinosaur media, we're going to take a look at the way you report. That is the sick-minded, psychotic Caitlin Collins, and I'm not going to go without. She's part of the dinosaur media that we need Brenda Carr to get under control. Okay, we won, they lost. All right, that's the bottom line. Let's act like we won. Now, I went a little bit over, but I want to give as much time as we possibly can to our interview guest, who, as I say, is absolutely one of my dearest friends, is one of the most astute political analysts that I know. Let me just give you real quickly a little bit of his background, okay? A little bit of it, okay? 63 years in broadcasting, okay? I told you since I was young. That's a long time. He started out, worked with Decca Records, worked with Brenda Lee and Jackie Wilson. To some of you like me, that's pretty good, pretty tall cotton. And when I started watching this gentleman, or listening to this gentleman, he was a news director at WCAO, which was the top rock and roll station in Baltimore when I was a kid throughout the entire 60s, okay? Get ready for this. And we're going to talk a little bit about this, as well as get his astute and incisive opinions upon the political scene today. While at CAO, he interviewed Spiro Agnew, George Wallace, Martin Luther King, Marlon Brando, Malcolm X, Jackie Robinson. I mean, these are some of the great names in history that this man talked to, and we're going to get a feel for what that was like. And he also spent an entire day with the Fab Four. For those of you who are younger than me, which is just about everybody watching right now, the Fab Four was what we called the Beatles when I was a kid. All right. And now let's welcome my friend and one of the most, a man with an incredible background, an astute political analyst, Frank Luber. Frank, welcome. Well,
thank you very much, Carter, for inviting me. And I'm really going to enjoy these next few minutes with you.
Well, we have a lot to talk about. And as I say, I like to keep this as a visit that our viewers can enjoy, as giving them some of the wonderful background that you can share with us. And then we're going to get into where you see things today, some of the stuff I've already discussed, because I know from listening to you for years as the top morning person on WCBM radio in Baltimore, I think 30 years, 32 years, that you are an astute political analyst. But first, let's go back in time. Can we do that? Let's go back in time, because the names I mentioned are people that the rest of us just read about in history books. Like let's just start with Martin Luther King. I mean, you did you interview him for? I think you were at Channel 3, right? The
Yeah.
Channel 13.
Actually, I interviewed him when I was with WCAO back in the
Okay,
60s. He came to Baltimore a couple of times. I interviewed him then. And then, of course, in 1963, in August of 1963, at the March on Washington, 250,000 people there at the Lincoln Memorial for the famous "I've Got a Dream" speech. And
right.
fortunately, I was able to be about 30 feet behind him, uh, about 30 feet or so. And standing next to me was Marlon Brando. So I had an opportunity to. Marlon Brando had like a rod with him. It was wrapped in brown paper. And I said to him, "What is that?" And he said, "This is a cattle prodder that they use on blacks in the South." He said, "You want to see what it's like?" And I said, "No, not really." I said, "But," he said, "Oh, don't worry." He said, let me give you a little buzz here." So he used the cattle prodder, hit me on the arm with it, and it did create a little bit of a shock. So I'm probably the only person in the world that was ever uh, buzzed by Marlon Brando with a
I know.
cattle prodder.
But now, what 1963? He was still in pretty good shape back then. He was still a young star at that point, right?
Yes, he was. Yes, yeah.
Yes.
That was a really momentous day when you think about it. Not only the I have a dream speech, but so many celebrities were there that day. I remember interviewing Jackie Robinson. There were some movie stars other than Marlon Brando who were there as well. It was just uh, sometimes when you cover events like this, you never realize that you're witnessing history in the making.
Yes.
And I cannot actually say that during the 60s and 70s, every day there was history in the making, and I didn't even realize
And,
it.
and you were part of it, and you were part of it. Parenthetically, I became good friends toward the end of his life with Ralph David Abernathy. You may
Oh,
recall. You recall, of course, he was Marlon. He
sure.
was Martin Luther King's right hand man, right?
Yep,
And he
right.
was a delightful person. And I would escort him around Washington. Okay, we were working on a project together, and one day I'm driving him along, and Dr. Abernathy turns to me and says, Cotta, I never thought that back in the civil rights day, I'd have me a white chauffeur."
That's funny.
Now, Jackie Robinson, when you talk to interview Jackie Robinson, who some of you who are very young realize this is the first black ever to play in Major League Baseball. I think it came in 1946. When you interviewed him, he had just retired from baseball about 6 or 7 years earlier, right?
Right, you're right. Yes. Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah.
And was just very always struck me as just a very polite, soft-spoken
Oh,
man.
yes. Very delightful to interview. And I mean, you would never have thought uh, that you were talking with a man who really made history. And, he was just kind of an ordinary person, really. I think everyone loved him, just like Willie Mays, although Willie Mays wasn't there that day.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, he was. Jackie Robinson always struck you as just a very low key guy, just a good, decent man. Now, Malcolm X, just, for people like me who never met him, all we see are pictures and footage. And he was just a very frightening looking man who as a grown up kid, I always thought, geez, he must really hate me because I'm white. What was your impression of Malcolm X when you interviewed him?
Well, I interviewed Malcolm X along with a couple of other reporters. Malcolm X was not invited to that march on Washington, but he showed up nonetheless. and he
Wow.
was staying at a hotel up on 16th Street. And that's where I was staying as well. So in the lobby, there were a couple of reporters along with myself that kind of cornered him and started interviewing him. He had a cup of coffee in his hand at the time.
Right.
And we were talking about race relations and things of that nature, because at that time he was basically a segregationist and didn't want whites and blacks to mix. And so he took this cup of coffee and he looked at it. He said, "See this cup of coffee?" And he said, "What color is it?" He says, and we all said, "Well, it's black." He said, "That's right. You don't put cream in it." So, so that was his message. And of course, as we all know, later on, he had sort of an epiphany. I think he went to Mecca and had a transformation, if you will, as to his thoughts, on race relations.
Yes, which may be one of the reasons why he was assassinated, quite possibly. And
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, right now his daughter is suing the U.S. government because she is claiming it was the FBI and CIA who did the assassination. Which at one time, Frank, I got to be honest with you, I would have thought was preposterous, but not anymore. What about you?
About what? I'm sorry.
About that Malcolm X's daughter is suing the U.S. government, saying it was the CIA and FBI that assassinated her father. And I'm saying at one time I would have said that's preposterous, but now I would not at all.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, that's why, you mentioned the CIA and some of these other alphabet agencies of the government. I don't trust any of them anymore, to be honest with you. And so she's going to be suing. Maybe she might have a case here, and I'm all in favor of exposing the CIA for what it is.
Yeah, and the CIA. I mean, to me, I don't know whether you agree. To me, there's little doubt left that they assassinated John F. Kennedy. I mean, I think
Yeah.
Robert Kennedy's right. What do you think? What's your take on that?
The thing is, we'll all be dead and gone before we actually learn the truth as to what happened to JFK. I still don't believe that one person, Lee Harvey Oswald, was the only person involved in that assassination. Uh, we'll never learn, I think, the real truth until we're all dead and gone, and then perhaps the real truth will come out. But here you had Lee Harvey Oswald, who really denied any uh, uh, involvement in the assassination. And then lo and behold, it's Jack Ruby who is able to get so close to Lee Harvey Oswald to kill him. It just didn't
Yeah.
make any sense to me.
No, and then Ruby dies a mysterious death. He ends up in the hospital, and suddenly he dies, and before he can talk much about anything, he's gone.
Right.
And I had friends who were in the mafia years ago, and they said Ruby was absolutely one of them. They said he was They said now he was a hanger on,
Yeah.
but he
There's
was
an
a
old saying, dead men don't talk. And it's the same way with the guy that tried to take out President Trump.
yeah, absolutely preposterous. The very idea on the Trump thing, that the Secret Service did not put people on that roof because it was too slanted for them to stand on. But this 18-year-old kid had no problem walking around the roof and standing and laying down on it. What do you think? How preposterous is that?
Well, I really believe that under Trump, we're going to learn the facts. Unlike the case of JFK, I think in this particular case, we're going to learn the facts and how the Secret Service, and I don't mean to be a conspiratorial theorist here, but I think there was some uh, uh, wrongdoing on the part of the Secret Service as well, and could very well have been involved in the assassination attempt.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm with you 100%. I mean, it was just too bizarre. And then the next thing we know, some guy is able to get onto the golf course up there. Where was that? Up in
It was in Florida.
Florida.
Yeah,
Yeah, some guy's able to get onto the golf course fully armed, hide in the
yeah.
bushes for hours, and neither the FBI or CIA did any, maybe a little advance work to look in the bushes. What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, I really believe a lot of this is going to come out under Trump. I think the assassination, the two assassination attempts on him, as well as the January 6th riots, I think at the Capitol, I think all the truth is going to come out when all these records are released to the public. And that's one thing we can look forward to as far as Trump being president. We're going to learn the truth about so many things that heretofore have been kept secret and away from the public.
And all right, Frank. I'm glad you brought up January 6th. My opinion is that one of Trump's first acts, as soon as he gets in, should be to grant a blanket pardon to all the hundreds of people, American citizens, who have been held in the Gulag for 3 years now, in the Gulag in Washington, many in solitary confinement, mistreated, brutalized, and not given a speedy trial, some not even formally charged. But that is one of the atrocities of our time. And in my opinion, I'm just going to tell you, the worst that they did was trespassing on public property. What's your feel for that?
Yeah, I mean, the charges that were placed against him are just ludicrous when you think about it. When you looked at some of the video of what was going on January 6th, you actually had Capitol Police and other law enforcement types that were directing people into the Capitol, more or less guiding them into the Capitol. And that told me something right then and there. Why would the police be uh, basically paving the way for these so-called quote and unquote rioters to be able to go into the Capitol? It's mind-boggling when you think about it.
It is mind-boggling, and the only person who was actually killed at the Capitol that day is the the lady who was trying to stop someone from breaking a window. That was it.
Yeah,
And,
right.
and the policeman shoots her in the head. Excuse me?
And, and then they try to blame Trump for all this. And we have on video, we've been able to capture exactly what he said. You know, it was basically his right to protest the results of the 2020 election. And all he did was say, protest in peace, go in peace, uh, and you know, don't do anything untoward or anything of that nature. And the other thing is that he even told, I think, Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington that he was willing to send in like 10,000 troops to protect the Capitol that day. And they all rejected it. So that told me something as well, that this whole thing could have been a planned stunt against Trump.
Against Trump. And now we have had Trump cohorts who have been prosecuted by Mary Garland, for saying that they thought the election was rigged.
Right.
Now imagine that. In the United States, they have labeled us saying we think the election was stolen. They have labeled that as election interference and actually arrested people for it. What was it? Do you remember the name of Trump's lawyer, the woman who they were going to strip her of her law credentials unless she begged and cried and said that she was wrong. There was no election interference. What was her name? She was one of Trump's top.
Sidney Powell.
No, Sydney, they did it to as well, but she didn't break down and cry and beg. This woman did. One of the most pathetic scenes I've ever seen. And I thought
Yeah.
to myself, that's something out of a Stalin kangaroo court, what they did to that woman. I
Yeah.
can't think of her name now. It may come to me later. But right now, even now, if you say that election in 2020 was stolen, they can come after you for election interference, which should not even be, to me, I don't even know how that's a crime unless it's stealing votes, like which is what they did, of course.
Yeah. There was no way that Joe Biden, who was basically in hiding during the 2020 election, no way that he was able to garner 80 million votes. I mean, Trump won this past election with 76 million. And you're going to tell me that Joe Biden in 2020 got 80 million votes? No way.
No way. Well, you saw the figures that for the last 5 or 6 elections, the total vote total was around 130 million. And all of a sudden, in that one election, it jumped up to almost 160. Then it came back down this year to about
Yeah.
130 million.
Yeah.
And that doesn't occur to any of the mainstream media. That's a little bit suspicious. And let's face it, I know people who voted for Biden. Okay, the idiots. Whenever I look at them, I assume they're waiting on the short bus. But I know people who voted for him, but I never saw them say, because I really love Joe.
Yeah.
So the idea that he had
Hey,
15
I
million
think of
more
it,
people.
uh, any presidential candidate has a right to protest or challenge the results of an election, and that was Trump's right to be able to do that. And yet, the media and the liberals got all over him for trying to quote obstruct justice and obstruct election interference, all that kind of stuff like that. But you go back to 2016, and who was actually guilty of election interference? None other than Hillary Rodham Clinton. She
Yeah,
protested the results and then perpetrated this whole Russia hoax.
yeah, and that I'm glad you brought that up because there you had someone that during the election created a hoax that we now know was a hoax, that the government itself has had to admit was a hoax. We know it originated with her. There is no doubt she took it to Biden, or not Biden, Obama, and he helped perpetrate it. As a matter of fact, he had been told, I mean, I can't stand the former CIA director, whose name slips my mind, not Clapper, the other guy who's so damn evil. Um,
Oh
but
yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
he had gone
can't
to,
think of his
to
name offhand. I can picture him, but I can't think of his name.
yeah, he had gone to Obama and said, look, Hillary has generated this. And Obama went ahead and helped perpetrate it.
Yep,
The
exactly.
entire Russia hoax, which not only interfered with the election, but it interfered with the entire presidency of Donald Trump.
And now they're doing the same thing with Tulsi Gabbard, claiming that she is a Russian asset. It's unbelievable.
One I would love, I love Tulsi Gabbard. She incredible patriot. I would love to be in the DNI when she goes in, because she is going to be approved. When she goes in, I will bet you right now, she's not the kind like Gates who's going to go storming in, yelling and hollering, which I think is fine. But I think with her, my prediction, she will quietly call in the top officials there who perpetrated the taking away her passport and labeling her a Russian asset and say, I'm going to give you a week to bring me the evidence you used against me. I'm going to give
Yeah.
you a week. And if you can prove it, I'll step aside. If not, make sure you have your resignation with you. I just have a feeling that's what's going to happen. And I would love to be a fly on the wall for it.
I believe in the end that Tulsi Gabbard is going to be confirmed by the Senate. We can talk about predictions and what have you, but I think Pete Hegseth is going to eventually get confirmation as well. The only one that I think is going to be problematic is going to be, and I think we may have some disagreement on this, is Matt Gaetz. And to be honest with you, my gut feeling right now, as far as Gaetz is concerned, I think Trump has put him out there as a sacrificial lamb, and at the same time is helping to protect him from any further embarrassment. That's my take on Trump appointing Gaetz, and I think really in the end, the attorney general might well be the deputy attorney general nominee, Todd. What's his name? Blanche rather.
Right.
Todd Blanche. I think in the end that he probably is going to be the substitute nominee for attorney general.
Do you think there's a chance that, okay, let's go with what you're saying. Maybe Trump put Gates out there to be a lightning rod, put somebody out there who is so hated by the Washington establishment that they will focus most of their attacks on him. I mean, we know McConnell, Romney, Murkowski, these vile people
Yeah.
just hate him because he doesn't
Yeah.
play the game with them. Do you what do you think? I think perhaps, and I want your read on this. He stuck Gates out as the lightning rod. Let him draw all the electricity in the lightning bolts.
Yeah.
And then when, as you say, when they refuse to approve him, have DeSantis appoint him as the United States Senator from Florida, which I would just love, because then he'd be in there in the conference with those who torpedoed him. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a deal that's already struck, that hasn't been publicized or anything of that nature right now. I believe that you may very well be right, and again, it would save Gaetz, for further embarrassment. By the same token, it would elevate him to one of the prominent positions in the Senate as a member of the U.S. Senate. So, yeah, I agree with you. There's going to be a deal struck here regarding Gaetz. And right now, I think that what Trump has done has put Gaetz out there because, as you say, he is a lightning rod. But at the same token, he, Gaetz does have a lot of what I would call baggage, and he will not have to, go through that any longer because he'll no longer be under the investigation of the House Ethics Committee. So, as I said, I agree with you. I think there is a deal that's going to be struck here, and in the end, Gaetz is going to have a prominent position, whether it's in the U.S. Senate or some other advisory role or what have you. But I don't think that he's going to be past the muster as far as being the attorney general is concerned. Now we may disagree on that, but and again,
Well,
I think what Trump is doing here is, like you said, he's a lightning rod, but at the same time, uh, he, the Rhino Republicans and the Democrats are going to spend a lot of political capital trying to get rid of him, and that might pave the way for a lesser attempt at some of the other nominees who are going to be coming under scrutiny.
yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. Let them focus and waste their ammunition on Gates. And then, but what about what about Attorney General? What about Mark Davis? I mean, I love Mark Davis. He's the one who served notice on Fannie Willis and Tish up there in New York that we're going to be coming after your fat asses. What about him? I would love to see him as
Him,
attorney.
or I like Blanche, as I said before.
Right.
So either one of those two, I think would be great.
You know, let me step back in time here for a minute on Attorney General. Okay. I have long felt that one of Trump's biggest mistakes was putting Jeff Sessions in as Attorney General. And the man was a weak sister. He betrayed Trump at every turn. And I'm going to stick my neck out and say, I think McConnell suckered Trump on that and said, put our friend Jeff in, knowing full well that the fix was in and that Sessions was going to betray Trump on the whole Russian hoax. What do you think?
Yeah, I really, well, when Trump won the election back in 2016, or actually took office in 2017, uh, Trump was a novice as far as politics are concerned. And he was getting a lot of advice from a lot of people that, when you look at it, were untrustworthy to begin with. And I think that McConnell was one of those that could not be trusted, and even today cannot be trusted.
No.
Who was basically advising Trump, as far as appointments are concerned and what have you. And so Trump, ended up having to get rid of a lot of these people, including Jeff Sessions, and who was his chief of staff, the military guy. I forget his name
John
offhand.
Kelly. John Kelly.
John Kennedy.
Who
That was another
betrayed him.
one too. And of course, Trump had to fire all these individuals. Well, he took a lot of heat for that, from the media, of course, and from even some lawmakers in Washington. But in the end, uh, he was getting bad advice, and basically from the establishment Republicans in Washington, getting bad advice, and as the result, he had to fire a lot of these individuals. And that made him look, bad in the eyes of the public, and the eyes, particularly in the media. But in this go round, it's far different. He's
Yes.
had 4 years to realize what's going on in Washington, and now he's very, very well prepared for a second term that I think is going to go down in history.
I think you're right. And let's never forget, in terms of the appointments, just as you're saying, let's never forget that McConnell and Ryan blackmailed Trump into putting John Boehner's chief of staff in as the head of White House personnel, which guaranteed that it was going to be filled with Washington insiders who disagreed with everything Trump was put there to do.
Yeah.
That's what we faced. That's what we faced. And you're right. This time around, he is, look, when he said no Pompeo and no the lady from Carolina, that was a good sign for us. That showed that this time he was going to be in full control.
Yeah.
And I think that was a great relief for all of us, tremendous relief for all of us.
To switch gears here for a second, you were talking about Ukraine before,
Right.
and Zelensky rather. In my eyes, I agree with you. Zelensky is not only a grifter, but he's an opportunist, and probably is making millions and millions of dollars, off this war in Ukraine, going up against Russia. The bottom line is that uh, what Trump is looking for is a peaceful solution to it all,
Yes.
as opposed to the Biden administration, which is and which is basically promoting war. Uh, Biden is no different than the Bushes and everyone else that came before him, part of the military complex that wants war. The Cheneys, the Cheneys, the Bushes, the Bidens, they all and Pelosi, they all want war. And why? Because I think they got their hands in the till, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they have their hands in the till. I think my own personal opinion is there are outright under the table payoffs. In addition, they know the insider information on the stock.
Yeah. And
And I,
I believe the same thing is true as far as the cartels in Mexico are concerned, who are basically making billions and billions of dollars. And during the Biden administration, we actually had an open border where millions and millions of illegals are coming into this country. And I really believe there's a rake off somewhere along the line. I can't prove it, that some of these politicians who didn't, raise concerns about what was going on were getting a rake off from the cartels.
I think you're exactly right. I think that the cartel, obviously the cartels in Mexico are in cahoots with their government, but I think they're also in cahoots with some of our government officials, because
Yeah,
those people being us throwing open the border. And people have to understand, my wife is Honduran, so she knows a good bit about this, because every one of her relatives and friends is an illegal alien. And those cartels ran the entire illegal alien invasion of this country. They raped the women over and over again that they would bring across. They kidnapped the children, sold them into waste. None of that, I'm sorry, that could not have been done without assistance at the high levels in our government. It
sure.
simply could not.
Exactly. And as I said, I can't prove it, but I just have a feeling that through second and third parties, that some of the money that the cartels are making are going right into the pockets of some of the politicians in Washington.
All right, Frank. One more. I always like to close with someone of your caliber, getting kind of your personal prediction as to where the American people are going to be in 4 years. Okay, you know the American people well. You were the heart and soul of Baltimore back when it was a great city. So people, you're beloved by the people of Baltimore still. I follow you on Facebook. I know how people feel about you. Do you think the American people are going to follow Trump as he leads us out of the wilderness?
I think Trump's inaugural speech is going to be one of unity. He's already said that on the campaign trail, and I think what Trump said resonated with me when he said uh, there will be no retribution. Success will be my retribution. And I think he's going to be one of the most successful presidents of all time. He's going to be a reform president. He's going to reform almost every single agency in government in Washington. And in some cases, may even end up eliminating some of these agencies, like the Department of Education, for example. Uh, there's also, I think, going to be a shakeup as far as the Federal Reserve is concerned, what influence they're going to have. I think he's going to be a transformational president, a reform president, and one who is going to be beneficial to every single American, be they Democrat, Republican, Independent, or what have you. And as the successes begin to mount, I think more and more people who were against Trump, whether they be Democrats, Rhino Republicans, or whatever, are going to see that through Trump's successes and the benefits that these people, the people throughout the country, are going to realize, are going to be uh, accepted by the public as as opposed to what we've been going through over the past 4 years. I think he's going to go down as one of the greatest presidents in our history.
I love it. I love it. And I say amen to that. And I thank you. Thank you for this interview. Thank you for joining us. I think now people can understand why, when I introduced you, I said the man is not only legendary, he is iconic, Frank. So it's been a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you so much. And if you can come back for the predictions, I'd love it. All right.
All
Thank you
right.
for joining us.
Thank you, Carter.
Wow. That is now you can see why I have benefited so greatly from knowing Frank, actually being on his radio show years ago at WCBM, a show called Conference Call, which he was the host of. It was a wonderful show, the most popular radio show in Baltimore. What he brings to the table is not only tremendous grace and experience, but also wisdom and knowledge. So I appreciate him joining us. And now we're going to wrap up. We have about 7 or 8 minutes left. We're going to wrap up with our predictions. So let's bring in Chad, Sam, and if we can bring Frank, there we go for our prediction segment. Now, Frank and I did a little of the predictions. I want my prediction. Each one of us, we're going to go around and each one of us give his top prediction as to what's going to happen in the coming weeks. My top prediction is that there is going to be a political bloodshed in the U.S. Senate. I think it is going to get ugly. I think there are 6 people who are going to end up very, very unpopular in this country, villains who are exposed. I'm going to name them: Thune, McConnell, Murkowski, obviously Mitch McConnell, Collins, and maybe the Cassidy from Louisiana. So that's my prediction. We're going to have a bloodbath. We're going to have a huge battle, and those folks are going to come out very anemic by the end of it. All right. Who wants to go next?
I can. I think that in the FDA we're going to see a mass exodus once RFK Jr. takes his position. I think that things are going to go crazy. I think pharmaceutical stocks are going to drop like crazy. I think it's going to have a huge impact on that part of our economy.
You think already the knives are out for RFK. We are, they're every vicious, vile rumor the mainstream media can set it. Because keep in mind, and see if you agree with me on this, Chad, because you're the one who obviously has looked into this area. To me, Big Pharma owns the network, the 4 networks. They own them. They all their advertising they do, they dictate. I think that's what happened to Tucker Carlson. I think Big Pharma said we want him gone, and he was fired. So what do you think is going to happen in terms, what is Big Pharma's reaction going to be? And will they destroy Robert Kennedy?
I think they're going to try, but I don't think they're going to be able to. We've seen a lot of things happen over the last couple of years. And, I'm going to bring up Joe Rogan. They tried to cancel Joe Rogan, but it turns out he's uncancelable. And Joe Rogan happens to be very good friends with RFK Jr. I don't think they're going to be able to do it. They can say all the bad things they want about him on mainstream media. However, when you look behind mainstream media and see the local podcast or the podcasts that are going on right now, where most people are getting their news at this point, they're not going to be able to cancel him. I don't think it's going to be possible. I think he's still going to be able to get his word out. And like I said, I think there's going to be a lot of rats jumping off the ship.
Excellent. I love it. All right, Sam, give us your big prediction.
I'm with Chad on that one because the RFK Jr. That announcement, kind of speaks personally to me because I've battled with, like a weight problem my whole life. And it's like, it took a while for me to finally really understand what clean eating can do for you and like how it can better your life, in addition to like, exercise here and there, but food is always the most important. So, and I'm already seeing RFK Jr. I'm sure Chad saw this too. He's like, we're going to put beef tallow back in the fries at McDonald's. And that's a big deal, getting rid of those seed oils. So, and beef tallow is delicious. I recommend it to everybody, like if you can fry your fries or, hash browns, whatever you want to do, it's delicious. But they're running scared. I agree with that. And that's the one I'm most concerned with because I want to see it happen, because, the food in this country, I love America. I love being an American, but the food is a problem, and I love RFK Jr.'s passion. It's great.
Delicious and terrible for you.
Yeah,
Well, you look good. You look good. It looks to me like you got your weight under control. Frank, what's your big prediction?
I think my big prediction has to do with the fact that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to be key advisors to President Trump. And I think what we're going to see is an amount of fraud, waste, and corruption in various government agencies that heretofore I always thought existed, but not to the extent that these two guys are going to, to expose. So that's my prediction, that there's going to be not only trillions of dollars that are now no longer going to be wasted through fraud and corruption and what have you, but we're going to see that translate into lower taxes for people in the long run. So the appointments of, not the appointments, but the fact that Trump is going to be leaning on Musk and Ramaswamy, I think is going to be just unbelievable as far as results are concerned.
I agree. I think it's going to be a hell of a ride. You know, the other day I called a friend of mine who's in one of the top agencies in Washington. I don't want to say the name because I'll figure out who it is and fire him. But I called him middle of the afternoon. He said, "Carter, how many times I have to tell you, do not call here at 3:00. When the phone rings, it wakes everybody up. It's nap time." And so I think you're right. They are going to be cleaning house. And I love every one of these predictions. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. And folks, thank you for joining us. This has been an incredible show. I've enjoyed every second of it. I have a feeling you have too. So let's get out there, fight, 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 stay strong. Let's do this thing.
Let's do it. Thanks, everyone.